Hello viewers, I'm your host Uzma Jafri with another episode of South Asia Focus. Let's begin the show. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was invited for the G7 summit this year too, urged the international community to work towards peace in the backdrop of the protracted Russia-Ukraine war. And while on one side Modi urged countries to invest in India's endeavours towards a green environment, he also underlined the urgent global need to focus on the energy needs of all. He said that all should come together to make everybody feel equal to one another.
The top leaders of G7 and the so-called outreach countries, including India, Indonesia and South Africa, gathered in Germany for this year's G7 summit. While a host of issues were on the table to be discussed, the Russia-Ukraine war remained the prime subject of the discussion during the summit. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was part of the multilateral discussions and who also held several bilateral meetings, reiterated India's position of cessation of all forms of violence and restoration of peace in all parts of the world. India also highlighted the major significant challenges, including the carbon-free world, vaccine inequity, and how each country deserved to be treated equal with another. Prime Minister's statement came especially in the backdrop of discrimination that poor countries faced during the pandemic. While addressing the Indian diaspora, Prime Minister urged other countries to invest in India-led green programs. He also flaunted India's achievements in the sector that it has managed to achieve way before the set deadline.
आज हम इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस के जरिए दुनिया भर के देशों को एक मंच पर ला रहे हैं ताकि सस्ती और एनवायरमेंट फ्रेंडली एनर्जी का लाभ दुनिया को दे सके। वन सन, वन वर्ल्ड, वन ग्रिड, ये सपना हमने दुनिया के सामने रखा। भारत ने 2016 में तय किया था कि 2030 तक हमारी कुल बिजली उत्पादन क्षमता का 40% नॉन फॉसिल फ्यूल से होगा। अभी 2030 से हम 8 साल दूर हैं, लेकिन भारत ये लक्ष्य हासिल कर चुका है।
Prime Minister Narendra Modi has raised India's nationally determined contribution target of non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatts by 2030 from a little over 151 gigawatt currently. India plans to manufacture 5 million tons of green hydrogen per year by 2030 to meet its climate targets and become a global production and export hub for the fuel. Modi also underscored the challenges that both India and the world faced in the face of the growing radicalization world over. India also discussed trade and economy with major partners it has had over the years. Modi also highlighted the issue of terrorism at bilateral levels and how two countries could come together to forge an alliance against this menace.
With the Prime Minister of Canada, the areas which I mentioned to you covered essentially trade and investment linkages, security and counter-terrorism cooperation, and promotion of people-to-people ties. I think Prime Minister made it very clear to the Prime Minister of Canada, but also to other leaders, that one of the major global challenges that all of us face is the challenge of terrorism. And that is something on which India has consistently adopted and advocated zero tolerance.
While taking a jibe at media critics during the summit, Modi apprised the world that India had fared much better than what was being expected of it during the pandemic. 90% of elderly in India are completely vaccinated and 95% of other eligible have received at least one dose of vaccination. So India summed up its story at the summit with its assertive position on key issues of the world and also reiterated to the major players that it does not support any form of hostility in the world. And India is ready to take the lead when it comes to going green or working for the sustainable development on the planet.
Moving on. Doctors, medical staff and people of various professions continued their anti-government protests this week too in Sri Lanka to demand that the severe fuel shortage at the heart of the country's worst economic crisis in the decades is resolved. The government, left with only limited fuel, has restricted supplies to essential services like trains, buses and the health sector for 2 weeks. The government has also raised fuel prices substantially and has urged people to not travel unnecessarily.
People belonging to all sections and all professions are protesting against the government's failures and the stringent steps it has taken in order to bring the situation under control. People demanded the government to come up with a real solution for the fuel shortage at the heart of the South Asian country's worst economic crisis in decades. The government, after realizing that the country was left with only enough oil that could last for a week, has restricted supplies to essential services like trains, buses and the health sector for 2 weeks. And this has only worsened the situation as even the essential services have been deeply hit by this decision. Doctors, nurses and other medical staff said that even though they are deemed essential workers, they struggle to find fuel to get to work.
සෞඛ්‍ය සේවාව බරපතල විදිහට ලක් වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ ඉදිරි දිනවල අපිට ඉන්ධන හරියට ලැබුණ නැත්නම් ඒ සෞඛ්‍ය සේව සම්පූර්ණයෙන් බිඳවැටෙනවා. අපි දන්නා මේ වෙනකොට මේ රටේ කෘෂිකර්මාන්ත බිඳවැටලා ඉවරයි, අධ්‍යාපනය බිඳවැටලා ඉවරයි, සෞඛ්‍ය සේවය 90%ක් දැන් බිඳවැටලා තියෙන්නේ.
Schools have gone online and civil servants have been told to work from home in order to conserve energy. Long queues of vehicles could be seen snaking around a shut petrol station in the capital Colombo. Commuters packed onto available trains and buses. The government has said that it will issue fuel only to trains and buses, medical services and vehicles that transport food till July 10. Even the intra-provincial bus service has been made limited, with people being asked to travel only in case of emergency.
මේක බලවත් අසාධාරණයක්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ ඉන්ධන අත්‍යවශ්‍ය සේවයක් විදිහට මිනිස්සුන්ට අත්‍යවශ්‍යයෙන්ම මේක පරිභෝජනය කරන්න අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා. මොකද ඉන්ධන නැත්තම් මේ රටේ සම්පූර්ණම ක්‍රියාකාරීත්වය අක්‍රිය වෙනවා. ඇත්තටම මේ මිනිස්සු ලොකු බලාපොරොත්තු තියාගෙන මේ රජය බලයටපත් කළා. ඇත්තටම මේ රජයේ පාලකයන්ගේ අදූරදර්ශී ක්‍රියාකලාපේ නිසා අද මේ ඉන්ධන මේ විදිහට මිනිස්සු පෝලිං වල දවස් ගණන් දුක් විඳිනවා. ඒ මිනිස්සු අසරණ වෙලා ඒ මිනිස්සුගේ දූ දරුවන්ට ජීවනෝපාය කරගන්න විදියක් නැහැ. මේක මහා බලවත් අපරාධයක් විදිහට මම දකින්නේ.
Meanwhile, a top delegation from the US Treasury and State Departments met with Sri Lankan leaders. Sri Lanka has sought overseas assistance to find a way out of its worst economic crisis in decades. As per reports, the delegation tried to explore the most effective ways for the US to help Sri Lanka out of its current economic crisis. A team from the International Monetary Fund was already working in Sri Lanka last week for talks on a possible $3 billion bailout package. The island nation of 22 million people has nearly run out of usable foreign exchange reserves to import essentials including food, medicine, petrol and diesel.
Moving on. India sent another relief package to Afghanistan as the war-torn country's crisis deepened following the massive earthquake that hit the country a few days back when over 1,000 people were killed. 60 trucks carrying 3,000 tons of wheat from India's northern Atari town were sent to meet the food needs of Afghanistan that have risen sharply in the last few days. This also comes in line with the Indian endeavours of providing a fresh push to the India-Afghanistan relationship that suffered a halt following Taliban's takeover of the country.
As many as 60 trucks carrying 3,000 tons of wheat from India's northern Atari town left for crisis-hit Afghanistan. Afghanistan was hit by an earthquake that killed more than 1,000 people this week, injuring about 2,000 people and damaging more than 10,000 homes. The Taliban government had appealed for more international support. India, which has already sent 30,000 tons of wheat to the country, whose large population is staring at famine, was swift in delivering another consignment. It is part of the humanitarian support that India has pledged for the people of Afghanistan. India will be delivering 50,000 tons of wheat to Afghanistan.
आज इसमें 3,000 टन माल जा रहा है, 60 ट्रकों में जा रहा है। अभी तक हमने 30,000 टन ऑलरेडी भेज दिया है और ये मिला के 33,000 टन माल हो रहा है।
सर, जैसे जलजला आया अफगानिस्तान में, कितना ये फायदेमंद होगा इनके लिए?
हमने सबने देखा है कि जो भूकंप अभी आया है रिसेंटली अफगानिस्तान में, उसमें काफ़ी क्षति पहुंची है। तो ज़रूर ये हमारा जो व्हीट जा रहा है इंडिया से, वो काफ़ी मदद करेगा अफगान नागरिकों के लिए।
The aid in the crisis-torn country is being delivered through the World Food Programme. The United Nations agency has dispatched the wheat consignments to Afghanistan via India's western neighbour Pakistan. The common people expressed gratitude to the government of India for helping them in the hour of need.
अफगानिस्तान का लोग बहुत बेचारा है, डॉक्टर वहाँ नहीं है, मेडिकल नहीं है और दवाई नहीं है। ये इधर तो लोगों को घर है, उधर यकीन मानो कि टेंट भी नहीं मिल रहा है। अब बस उनका आगे जो इमदाद किया उसका भी शुक्रिया, बाकी भी कोशिश करे जो इनसे होता है बस करे, जितना भी करे।
Afghanistan has been cut off from direct international assistance because of Western sanctions, deepening a humanitarian crisis in the swaths of the country. The disaster is a major test for Afghanistan's hardline Taliban rulers, who have been shunned by many foreign governments due to concerns about human rights since they seized control of the country last year. And while the West and the US have been reluctant to send the much-needed support to the Afghans, India has stepped up its humanitarian endeavours. Apart from wheat, India supplied the 7th batch of its medical assistance, consisting of 6 tons of essential medicines this week. Moreover, in the wake of the recent tragic earthquake, India, as the first responder, supplied almost 28 tons of earthquake relief assistance in 2 relief flights. While some say that India has been trying to regain its pre-Taliban era position, others have labelled New Delhi's support to Afghanistan as strategic to prevent Pakistan's influence in the region. The Indian government on the other side has maintained that it has no hidden agenda or any ulterior motive, and it will continue to support its neighbours in stress. Be it Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal or the Maldives, India has come to the rescue of all its smaller neighbours whenever they have found themselves in the middle of the crisis.
Time now for Asia This Week. Stories from across the continent.
Israeli lawmakers voted this week to dissolve parliament following the collapse of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett's ruling coalition, opening the way for a November 1 election that will be the Israel's fifth in less than 4 years. Bennett was replaced by his coalition partner, Foreign Minister Yair Lapid, who will lead the government during what is expected to be a bitter election battle with opposition leader and ex-premier Benjamin Netanyahu. Bennett, a former army commando and tech millionaire, will not run in the election. In a statement last week, he said his government had left a thriving, strong and secure country and had shown that parties from different ends of the political spectrum could work together. In a statement last week, he said his government had left a thriving, strong and secure country and had shown that parties from different ends of the political spectrum could work together. Netanyahu, ousted just over a year ago by Bennett's unlikely coalition of parties from both the right and left, as well as from Israel's Arab minority, has vowed a return to power at the head of the right-wing Likud party. While opinion polls currently show Likud to be the strongest political party, they show no clear winner from the election, leaving Israel facing months of political uncertainty as economic and regional security problems mount. Indonesian President Joko Widodo visited Kyiv for a visit to Ukraine in hopes to rekindle peace talks between Russia and Ukraine and to explore ways to free up exports of grain to global markets. President Widodo, better known as Jokowi, and his wife arrived in the Ukrainian capital by train, video released by the palace showed. He then traveled to war-torn Irpin near Kyiv to witness the destruction of civilian residential areas following Russia's invasion into Ukraine. Jokowi is the chair of the Group of 20 or G20 nations and one of 6 world leaders the United Nations appointed as champions of a global crisis response group formed to address the threat of hunger and destitution posed by the war in Ukraine. Before the war, Ukraine had been one of Indonesia's biggest wheat suppliers. The Indonesian leader said he will urge Putin to agree to a ceasefire. Japan is eager to export its food product. Recently, a food export fair was held in capital Tokyo. In the exhibition, around 400 exporters and producers exhibited their produce to attract foreign buyers. Most of the exhibited products are free to taste. This grand exhibition was organized by JETRO. JETRO set the booth named Jafodo. It is the steering organization of Japanese food export. Many foreign importers visit to get consultation. Under the shortage of wheat trading, rice powder is re-evaluated its value. Rice powder is the ingredient of noodle, dumpling and bread. Also, it is highly evaluated by gluten-free effect.
So our purpose to attend this food event is to seek looking for possible negotiation with the Japanese, one of the most successful companies, and intention is to provide Mongolian people in healthy and the good organic foods. Mongolian has lack of gluten-free products, and that's why we are very interested to import this type of gluten-free products to Mongolia. And due to the allergic to the gluten, people can't eat the noodle soup in Mongolia. So we want to solve this problem in Mongolia.
Japan is also called Fruit Heaven. Each prefecture of Japan has its honorable fruit. Japan's strategic food export plan will accelerate world trading and solve the shortage problem of world food product accommodation. In the recent years, drone technology has picked up pace, especially with operation systems being improved and deregulated. Now companies are focusing on the latest drone technology, which will be efficient for logistics and disaster sites. In Japan, the level 4 of the drone system will begin by the end of this year. Under this system, the operator of the system could fly a drone in the area where it is not visible to the operator's eye. Terra Labo conducted a research and development project on the subject of support system in this area, which is devastated. This drone has the capacity to fly at the speed of 2000 km per hour.
この大型のテラドルフィンは 2000km 飛ぶことを想定して作られております。機体はどうしても大きくなるんですが、その分燃料がたくさん積めるようになりますので、長距離化が可能になっております。我々が目指しているのは災害対策 DX です。広域な災害が起きますと、自治体や政府、あるいは地域の住民の方々の情報というのが一時断絶することになりますので、それらを横断的につなげる役割を担えればというふうに考えています。
Japanese company Robodex Corporation has developed a drone that uses hydrogen fuel for its battery. Considering the environmental aspect, the company believes that clean fuel will be the key to flying long distances. As drone regulations are relaxed and technologies are being developed, drones will be useful in disaster management, logistics, and all other fields in the future.
Moving on, Indian devotees embarked for Amarnath Yatra, a Hindu pilgrimage to the Amarnath shrine dedicated to Lord Shiva in northern Jammu and Kashmir. The pilgrimage has resumed after a gap of 2 years owing to the coronavirus pandemic. Amarnath cave, covered by snow almost all year round, contains an ice stalagmite that is considered a physical manifestation of Hindu Lord Shiva.
Taking place after a suspension of 2 years, this year's Amarnath Yatra is expected to be visited by 6 to 8 lakh pilgrims, almost twice the size than ever before. Located at an altitude of 3,888 meters, the holy Amarnath cave is believed to be an adobe of Lord Shiva and his consort Parvati, making it as one of the most pious sites among the Hindus. Devotees take 2 possible routes to reach the cave. The shorter but steeper trek is 14-kilometer long route via Baltal, Domial, Bararai and Sangam. The longer but more preferable route is around 47 km via Pahalgam, Chandwani, Pisutop, Sheshnag and Panchtarini. A number of arrangements have been done by the administration this year for the safety and security of pilgrims.
बाबा बर्फानी के दर्शन के लिए पहली बार आए हैं और बहुत ही अच्छा लग रहा है। इधर का जो वातावरण है बहुत ही अच्छा है और लोकल सपोर्ट प्रशासन का भी बहुत ही अच्छा पुख्ता इंतजाम है। सुरक्षा के इंतजाम भी हम जब से जम्मू से निकले हैं तब से सीआरपीएफ के जवानों ने हमें बहुत ही अच्छा सहयोग दिया है।
Covered by snow almost all year round, Amarnath cave contains an ice stalagmite that is considered a physical manifestation of Lord Shiva, a Hindu god. Shiva's wife Parvati and his son Ganesha are also present here as 2 smaller stalagmites. The site is said to be one of the most revered pilgrimage sites among Hindus, and every year thousands of devotees travel to the shrine. Devotees were excited to have returned to the shrine after a long break and could be seen chanting Jai Baba Barfani to pay obeisance to Shiva.
और बाबा से यही मेहर करती हूँ कि पूरे वर्ल्ड में विश्व में शांति रहे, अच्छी रहे और सबकी यात्रा बढ़िया हो।
According to legend, Lord Shiva decided to tell Parvati the secret to his immortality in this cave. The cave was discovered by a shepherd named Bhuta Malik in 1815. A Sufi saint gave him a bag of coal which later turned into gold. When Bhuta rushed to thank the Sufi saint, he could not find him. Instead, he found this ice stalagmite and believed it to be a sign of Lord Shiva. This stalagmite gets full in shape in May every year, after which it begins to melt, and by August it is only a few inches in height.
Security has been beefed up this year to nearly twice the number it used to be in the pre-pandemic era. With that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.